Dude, let's go.
Let's go. Let's
Okay.
do it.
Whether you like it or not, this is officially being recorded.
No, this is great
Um,
because I hope to take something out of it and look back on it about 100 more times. So,
well, I hope so too, man. I hope so too. So here's what I'm going to suggest. I'm going to like beg you into this, okay?
okay.
I realize that like we're live over on Facebook and YouTube and whatever, but here's the kick. I don't want you to think about it, okay? And I'm gonna try really hard to not think about it either. I want this to feel as though this is us. Here, cheers, having coffee and me getting to know water.
Mhm.
You're such a trainer right now, and
Dude, like I barely drink water, and today I'm just like, yo, I really need to drink some water.
it's a good point. So, dude, I want to know about your company. Um, from you firsthand. I've got the questionnaire in that I sent over to you, and I have questions about your answers.
Okay.
But I want to hear you. I want to hear you explain who you are as a creative.
As a creative, well, obviously my name is Joe. I pretty much and I run Joe Torres Photography. Um, so right now it is officially a wedding and engagement photography company. Um, Although I do side commercial stuff pretty often now, which is a nice supplement to me first. Like this is my first real year doing weddings.
Okay.
Um, so before this, I was actually just doing kind of whatever somebody needed. So birthday party, baby shower, portraits. That was my go-to. And then I actually linked up with an Emmy award-winning violinist by the name of Damien Escobar.
Yeah.
We actually lived in the same building in Westchester, and we became really cool friends. Funny enough, by working out, and um, yeah, like I used to make fun of him, and then I was like, hey, I'd really like to do headshots because that was the other thing I was big on was doing headshots, and he was like, yeah, sure, not knowing that this guy who he was. Um, he's probably heard that same question like 1,000 times, funny enough. And it wasn't until I actually did like a short video for his trainer, and did some photos for the trainer that he texted me at like midnight. He was like, dude, you and I need to talk. So then we chatted, and then I was mainly his photographer and videographer for a good part of all of 2019, which really like made me go, wow, like I can really do this thing. Um, and then, and I was on tour with him for 3 weeks or a month, something like that, which is a lot of fun, a lot of work, but a lot of fun. Um, and I was getting inquiries from people asking if, I would do their engagements because they saw like photos of me and my wife, which I take all the photos of me and my wife. So that was how that kind of got started. And then I was like, yeah, sure. Like I've always wanted to get into weddings, so I was like, sure, I'll start doing engagements. Started doing engagements. Um, then COVID happened, and the world went to darkness. And that's when I was like, like it gave me a lot of time to really reflect on what it is I wanted to do, what makes me happy. And I'm like, you know what? I'm really like a hopeless romantic. So, and I love storytelling. I love seeing, I'm so fascinated by people's lives. More so like the intimate moments of like why they fell in love, who they are. Like that intrigues me the most. And I'm like, wow, I really want to capture that and show that to you.
Okay.
Um, and so yeah, so with that, I ended up booking this year a total of 9 weddings split between this year and next year.
Okay. Yeah. So that's a. I mean, listen, for your first year doing that, that's a pretty solid booking rate.
Yeah,
I know you mentioned in your questionnaire to me that you're basically only doing word of mouth marketing at the moment, right?
yeah. Yeah,
So
that's
that's nine. So that's nine couples that have trusted you to be their photographer based just on the fact that you carry enough trust,
yeah.
already in their sphere of influence or circle or whatever.
Yep.
Okay, that's a big deal. That's really cool. Okay, so let me dive like deeper then because I have a few questions for you, but I want to get in to like the nitty gritty.
Yeah.
Why? Like, and there's a clear answer here, and I want you to be authentic. Here. Let me tell you the backstory. I was a
Okay.
personal trainer actually. When I moved to Arkansas from New York, or back to Arkansas from New York, I was a trainer I ran a gym for 3 years.
Okay.
Um, and I became fascinated during that time with just like the human psyche, just the way that we talk ourselves into and out of things.
Hmm.
And it really was sort of my informal education in psychology came from watching people, um, pay hundreds of dollars every hour to work out with me, and then leave the parking lot and go to McDonald's to celebrate. Um,
Yep, I know that
so
all too well.
So what is it? What is it then about holding a camera that like empowers you? Like what is it about you? Not your client, not being a hopeless romantic. That's all about them. Like that's all serving them. What is it to you that's important?
I think that's a good question.
It's an
um,
important one to know. It's an
no, it is.
absolutely
It
important
is.
important one to answer.
I would say there's two answers. So, um, important to me is just being able to artistically express how I view the world.
There
Um,
it is.
that is the biggest thing for me because I'm such an optimistic person. Um, like I almost think like I'm sometimes like a real life anime character that's such like a goofball. Like I'm just like so and my wife is a testament. She's like you I don't think negative about a lot of people at all ever. Um it's very hard and I'm just like for me like I want people to see that. Like I want people to see like there's good in the world. There's these moments and it could be brief like I mentioned in the questionnaire it could be brief. I don't care but I want people to see like there's magic still out there. Like it's not all just get up, go to work, and be miserable with your life. Like there are brief little pockets of joy in every day.
Yeah,
uh,
so let me rephrase that for you because I want you to hear yourself talk.
okay.
This is something that I'm going to do a lot. When we coach, I say things back to you in the answer that to the actual question I asked. So the actual question I asked was, "What is it to you?" And people do this naturally. They do this instinctually because we're sort of ingrained with this idea of like we need to sort of stay humble, or we need to think outside of our heads, or
Mhm.
we need to be like a bigger picture. But the key, the sort of the secret, I think that comes with being an artist is that when you can internalize before you externalize, you're really capable of tapping your creative boundaries and understanding where those parameters are. And so what you just said is that there's brief moments of of joy in your life that you like to have captured. And there is pieces and moments of magic in your life that you like to have captured and that you want memories of. And there's experiences in your life as an artist that are valuable enough to you that then you can assume or presume, I guess, that those things happen to other people and your value on that is something that other people would value as well. Am I right?
That is spot on. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
never,
Okay.
I never like internalized it like that, but yeah.
Yeah. So because it's hard when we're constantly trying to see ourselves through a third person lens. That's just sort of an instinctual thing because you see yourself as a brand, right? Or you see yourself as a company or as a photographer, or like you give yourself a title that is inherently third person.
Yeah.
But you have to see yourself as Joe. Like the key to understanding how to communicate to your clients and how to do a better job for them, what your website needs to look like, which we'll talk through, your social media influence, even the brand, the way you dress, the way you shake hands. It has to come down to like, who is Joe as Joe, right? Like, because because we always have this disconnect, this branding disconnect, where we're trying to educate people on a third person view of ourselves, but they know better than we do. Like, they see a third person view of ourselves. Right. So typically what you need, if you want a clearer picture of what a third person view of you looks like, is this. You need a coach or a mentor or somebody that you trust to look at you from the outside and say, hey, here's what I see. But then that only matters that there's no pivotal element to that. There's no value to that whatsoever, unless you can echo it from the inside and say, yeah, but this is what I see, right? Like, this is who I am to me. Here's my values, my character, my perspective. And it's in the tension between the two. It's in the difference between the two. That's the magic. Right. And we all know people that like live in this sphere where everything is remarkably aligned. And it's like, we always say the same way. Oh, they can't help but be who they are. Right. Well, those people have just as big insecurities, often bigger insecurities, but they see themselves probably often, I would say they see themselves inclusively enough that they know how to really, really accurately hide those insecurities, even from themselves. They know how to kind of push them aside. That can be a really powerful business concept, but it's a really crappy way to live, right? Yeah. So let's dig then into this idea of, because you said something that's super powerful, and it's something that I've said a million times, but you said, or I'm going to paraphrase you by saying something about your magic. You were talking about where the magic is, but you were actually speaking to like your magic, like where the magic is for you.
Right.
So you pick up a camera and you show up to a shoot, and you have, let's, cause you want to get deeper and deeper into the wedding world, right? God help you. But you have a couple that has hired you to do that for them.
Right.
When and where does the magic show up for you?
Where and when?
Let me give you a broader question there.
Yeah.
Is it in the actual shooting? Is it in the moment of creation, like the moment of capture that you feel the most inspired? Is it getting out of the car or out of the taxi or whatever and like hugging your client? Is it planning or in all the pre-production time? Is it after it's all been shot and you get home and you load the images and you look at them? For you, where is the magic?
It's in two places. First place, conversation before we even get to the shoot. I do this thing with the couple that I learned from Pi Jerza, which is the wave, the wall art visual exercise. And when I get to talk to them and they both separately paint that picture for me, that's when I know it's almost like kind of being a little bit like Doctor Strange and kind of forwarding in time in that moment. And I'm like, I kind of preemptively know or can picture everything that's going to happen up until we get to that moment, where that moment kind of just creates itself for their wave. And it's, I tell my friends this all the time. It's like I don't like posing, but I like being a little bit of a puppeteer, kind of like just small, like you kind of mentioned, is like these small little phrases or something small and subtle that gets the couple to just do what they're going to do. And then the second part where the magic happens is when we're interacting and I tell them to do something and then at that point when they're comfortable and they're just kind of doing their own thing and I'm watching them silently, like I'll sometimes step away or I'll sometimes get really close and they're just in their own world at that point. And that's when like a smile or a smirk or he or she says something and like that's where the magic is. And I'm like, and I'm already there. So for me, that's where the two places happen for the magic.
Okay, so let me again. You're always going to hear me say this back to
Yeah.
you. Then, so then what you just said is, it has largely nothing to do with. Now, don't get me wrong. I understand these are ingredients. Like it's an
Mhm.
ingredient of it, but like it has largely nothing to do with the gear you're shooting, the lighting you're in, the compositions, the whatever. The magic for you comes in when your relationship and your communication align.
Yep. Yep.
So you have a couple or you have clients that understand what's valuable to you and you understand what's valuable to them and it all comes together and then the image just tells that story.
Yep.
Right? Okay. So and here's why I want to question you on this.
Okay.
If that's the case, and this would be like if we continue down a coaching path with you, then what I'm gonna challenge you with, I'm to like heavily lean in on, is the fact that your pregame and your postgame have to be honestly better than the actual game. Your client experience, your relationship with these people, the way that you're communicating and the way that you're pulling them in and exposing yourself to them needs to be incredibly vulnerable if you're going to ask them to do that back. And so with that in mind, you don't get to hide behind the facade that most of the industry is. That's like, hey, here's my website, here's my work, here's my portfolio, and then like here's my post processing style, here's my Instagram, because all of those things create unnatural or at least inorganic boundaries between you and the couple.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So your value then will kick in. And I want to ask another question here in a second, but your value then will kick in and heavily kick in when you can remove all of those boundaries. And it's literally just you and them. And then you allow I've been saying this for years. You allow the images to almost be a byproduct of that exposure.
Pretty much.
Right. Okay. So then here's the question. And this is like the biggest question is then what's holding you back?
Me. It really is me because at the same time, it's like I almost feel like I face this duality. And this is something that I've noticed for a really long time. And it's my active subconscious versus me in the real world.
Slow down. Don't get psychoanalytical here.
Okay, so essentially,
don't talk in third persons.
Okay, so essentially, I will feel confident about something, and then at the same time, I'll start talking myself out of it. To put it like basic.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. There you go. You self-sabotage.
Yeah. Oh yeah. 100%.
Uh-huh. Okay.
That's been my biggest battle forever.
Okay. So break out of the lens then of a photographer for just a second and talk into something that you're obviously not only very educated in, but very capable in. Okay. If I walk into your gym and I say, hey, Joe, dude, I have got to be, by the way, you've only got 6 months to make this happen. I've got to be 220 and under 5%. It just has to happen. So I need to gain about 30 pounds, but I need to drop about 7% body fat. What do you say?
Why? Why is that important to you? Why that specific timeline?
So when you self-sabotage, when you jump in your own way and you say like, hey, I need to succeed at this. This is a passion of mine. This is something I want. And the faster it comes, the better. The more I grind, the more I hustle, the better I connect, the better my website looks like, the more photography clients I have, the faster I can leave my side hustle. Maybe you need a coach that's willing to look at you and say, why? Because here's the deal. The answer to the first question is, well, Miles, whether or not that timeline is realistic or not is going to rely on all kinds of variables that I'm not in control of. Your genetics, your discipline, your diet, your ability to change and handle stress, your hormone, all of the things that are going to create boundaries through which we can or can't achieve those goals for you are not the problem, though. The problem is that you are not putting in the reps yet, and yet you're asking me for unrealistic results.
That was literally would be like the second thing I would say after you answer why.
They're unrealistic results because you've skipped that valuable thing that everybody tells you in business school, right? Like, hey, what's your 5-year plan? Your 5-year plan only matters. And by the way, it's a beautiful exercise. It really is something that I think is important and something that we'd talk through, but it only matters if you understand what next week looks like.
Right.
If you're capable of putting in the reps, well, then you're able to look at your body holistically. You're able to look at your career or your industry or your portfolio holistically and say, okay, here's where I am right now, right? Here's the camera I have. Here's the editing process that I know. Everybody will always tell you, you don't know what you don't know. Mm-hmm. But the second part to that is most people don't know what they know either.
Right.
So we need to start to shape you a framework through which you have a better understanding or a more clear picture of what it is that you do know. And it's not being run through the comparison or through the lens of what other people are selling or what is working for other photographers or what seems to be like industry standard. You've already broken through a lot of those boundaries on a number of things. So let me encourage you to say like, okay, number one, you're in New York. You're in the most oversaturated photography market in the country. Second only, I think, to Bentonville, Arkansas. There's a jab. Shots fired, guys. But you're doing it. And in your very first year, given, I understand you're in a city with close to a city. Obviously, I know you're outside of it, but close to a city of 9 million people, you have 9 couples that have decided to trust you. So there's that. 2, you have completely avoided picking up the camera that if you Google searched what camera should I buy as a wedding photographer, you've avoided picking up any of the top 5, and you've made your own choice. Which is a beautiful thing. And 3, the way you just described what's important to you is probably the most mature perspective on why to get into this industry that you could possibly have. Because when I sit down and have mentor calls with people and they say, well, I really want to shoot fashion, but weddings pay more, I just kind of laugh. Because I'm like, well, I mean, that's only true until it's not. Right. So we're going to dive over into a few things from your questionnaire though, because I have a couple of like just sort of questions for you that I want you to expand on. First things first, let me back in. You told me, and because we're live, I'm not going to go super detailed with this, but you told me in your questionnaire that you want to make 400% more money than you're making currently with, yeah. Roughly. I mean, that was the goal.
Roughly,
right?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's actually, to be honest with you, that's not an unrealistic expectation. Actually, there's a trajectory that you can set there. It may take you, 2 or 3 years to get there, but I don't think that's necessarily an unrealistic trajectory. Now, I saw you look away like, oh crap, that's a long time.
No,
Um,
that's more of like I didn't think 2 or 3 years. I was thinking like 5 or 6. But yeah,
okay, well let's set you on a trajectory for 5 years, and then you blow it out of the water.
that'd be great.
Wouldn't you rather? Yeah. So then you look back at me and you say, hey, Miles, you can be either sub 5% or 220, but you're not going to walk in to the spring at both. Which is more important to you, right? And then you can start to kind of build this. So let's do it this way. Um, you you mentioned to me that you feel like you have a lot of support.
Mhm.
So who is that for you? Like who's the most supportive people in your lives?
My wife,
Okay.
my mom, and my aunt, who's like a second mom. Um, and I would say majority of my friends.
Okay. Um, okay, that's really cool. So, assuming that you succeed, completely succeed, and 5 years from now, you're in that $500,000 bracket.
Okay.
Um, do you expect that group of people would change, or would probably be very similar?
It would expand.
Okay, tell me why.
Um, I believe in filling your cup and filling other people's cups. So when I say expand, I think along that journey, I'm going to meet people who are going to continue to help not just myself, but that I could help them grow. So it's kind of like a we all grow together type of deal. So that's where I think it would grow more. So and it already kind of has, just being like shameless plug to our Facebook group. It honestly really has because there's two people in there who have already helped me, um, and that I can. And if I'm at where I'm at now, and we fast forward in time to being successful, then I can only imagine that growing more.
Yeah, that's a really powerful answer because I think it leans into that. Now I know you've already seen my the varsity protocol,
Hmm.
right? Where we basically encourage you to separate your sphere of influence into A and B teams.
Yep.
It's really powerful that you already have that perspective where you're able to say like, hey, here's my A team. Like these are the people that I don't expect to change in my life, regardless of like sink or swim. And then here is the group of people that I would like to see scale. And the reason for that is because it's going to allow us as we start to look through your marketing material and start to talk through your process and your client experience and your pricing and all of those things to understand that you have these people in your varsity list that you can probably leverage their knowledge, their expertise. You can lean on them, but it's actually the other group of people that you're wanting to be influenced, right? You're wanting that group to grow, and the reason that's so valuable to understand that is because you've got to speak to them. You've got to figure out who they
Hmm.
are, where they're hiding, and you need to speak directly to those people. And especially as a primarily word of mouth, marketing engine, understanding that you can actually grow, literally incubate your own clientele from the inside if you're doing a good enough job at serving the people that are on that list. Does that make sense?
Yep. Yep.
So okay. So quick questions for you. What is it about you mentioned three? I asked you for three photography brand or non-photography brands, sorry, that inspire you. And
Uh-huh.
you mentioned Apple, Huckberry, and Roan. What is it about those that really kind of get to you?
Apple, like I mentioned, is the Steve Jobs era. Even though they've obviously kept it, but one thing I enjoyed about Steve Jobs was his 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 drive for making something just work. being as simplified as possible. And for me, it inspires me because the simpler I can make something for someone else, the simpler I can make something for me, I feel like the groundwork is a little bit harder, um, but the reward is there, and it allows, especially if we're talking in the context of wedding photography, the simpler I can make something for a couple, the easier the access. Huckberry, I'm inspired by them because they speak to my more like, if I could picture an everyday life, like retired life, like they're such it's kind of like so earthy. Like they're just like chill out in my cabin with my fireplace, chop up some wood, and like have a glass of whiskey and chill out. So
Sounds good to me.
yeah, I know, right?
Mm-hmm.
So to that, I've always had like that. I enjoy that aesthetic, which again kind of comes down to like just being down to earth. Um, and then the last one, Roan, it kind of I appreciate them because the quality of the product is just flexible. So kind of like Lululemon, they pretty much make everyday like either workout gear, commuter pants, shirts that are just flexible. So I hate, like, as a trainer, this is like the trainer in me. I hate feeling restricted when I need to do something. So like if I need to get down low for a shot, like I don't want to have the thought that my pants are gonna rip. Like I should be able to go squat in these pants at a gym, or I can go to a photo shoot.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, that's the brand that I enjoy the most because and it's just so comfortable. Um, so and that attests, I mean, depends on how meta you want to get, but
Yeah.
it attests to like just me wanting for people to feel comfortable around me.
That's why I clicked over to your website while I was hearing you talk about it, because I want you to have to sit there and stare at your work while you're thinking, while you're talking. This is a great exercise for you to do. But I literally do this. I'm not kidding when I say this. I literally will do this to myself. I will find a brand. I will find something that inspires me. And
Mhm.
I will sit there and I'll look at my work while I'm talking or thinking about that thing and see whether or not those two things align. Because I'll tell you this. I'm about to give you some like serious, so that we can wrap up in about 15 minutes with some serious actionable things, like some actual actionable things that I want you to dig in on. But I want you to grasp this. I think that the single biggest thing, probably the single biggest hindrance to 90% of photographers' careers, is a lack of self perspective and a lack of an understanding of the way that they're communicating what is valuable to them in their work. And so you mentioned a few things that are really, really critical to you. Those being, first and foremost, you said the word comfort about 100 times.
Yep.
And so, you're trying to communicate then with your work, with your brand, this level of comfort, and then at the same time, you didn't actually use the word utilitarianism, but basically like this simplicity, right?
Mhm.
Where everything has a function,
Yep.
and so there's not a lot of like extra, right?
Yeah.
In these brands that you're drawn to. And there's a really interesting dichotomy there between something that is comfortable and not extra. And you know what that's called? That's called luxury. That's why you pay more money for Swiss watches. It's why you pay more money for, Lululemon commission pants. It's why Volvo is more expensive than Chevy, because the simplicity is where the luxury lies. And so as you look through your work, and even possibly more dynamically, as you design ways for other people to experience your work, you need to make sure that you're designing those things in tandem, that your website is communicating those things. I will tell you, just to be frank, I think that you said something really fascinating to me that was an absolute tractor beam in your questionnaire to me, and you said your website sucks. Why do you think your website sucks?
Got like nothing on there. I definitely need to put more time into adding my content on there.
So what are you spending your time on right now?
Um, Learning the business side of photography.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair. I mean, that's not to put you on your heels. That's just,
Oh yeah.
I say this a lot. The currency of business changes the longer you're in it. So early on, typically as a business owner, your currency, what you have the most of is time. Even if you don't have time to give, typically you have more time than you have money. The more successful you get, typically, the more money you have and the less time you have.
Yep.
Happiness exists when you can balance those two things. And you're making enough money to spend the time wisely, and you have enough time to invest the money wisely. Right? So as it is right now, I think if I'm going to give you like one or two very like quick actionable steps to like move, I would say first things first, you need to draw your website. And what I mean by that is not necessarily like sketch it. I mean, like, you need to build a table of contents on a piece of paper that says, these are all of the places and things that I want people to experience and feel and hear and understand through my website. And they can be everything from call outs, quick quotes or moments of copy to where you're expressing something that's valuable to you. I did a mentor call similar to this yesterday, though it was slightly less formal, where I looked through a friend of mine's website, and he had the most beautifully articulate sentence that completely sums up who he is as an artist, hidden inside a paragraph about 3/4 of the way down his first page. And all I told him to do was just separate it, make it bold, build a square around it, draw every tractor beam that you can, because this is who you are. Like, this is who you're trying to be. And then get rid of any piece of work, any single slice of work that doesn't convey who you are or who you're trying to be. So if they're duplicate images, if it's another example of the last image that they just saw, then pick the best one and get rid of the other one. Because you're going to have to start to get down to where you're paring down and curating what you think of is good. And the reason for that is because you've got to be able to communicate that to your couples as a part of this pregame, where you're saying like, hey, we're going to shoot so much. We're going to shoot too much. We're going to deliver way too much. We're going to love on you too much. But these are the 3 or 4 things that are most important to me. And then before you dig in on actually redesigning the website, allow that skeleton, allow that table of contents that you have built. The website is just a tangible example of ways that then you can integrate that table of contents into your entire brand. Does your logo speak to those ideas of like comfort and simplicity? Does the way that you explain yourself, is your bio coming from a perspective of that? I tell everybody that we do in these calls, like, third person bios are so 1990s, it's unrealistic. You have to speak to people about yourself, but that bio is really critical. And the reason for that is because whereas most people hide behind silly cliches or insecurities, right? And will say like, oh, I love coffee and labradoodles. Who you are early on in this call, you were very vulnerable in saying like, these are elements of myself that drive or inform me as an artist. And that's your bio. But more than that, that's your entire marketing hook. So now we've built you in like, an hour or 2 hours in an afternoon. We've built you a skeleton through which you can build your entire brand based on. This is an entire experience. Before you even rebuild the website, this is an entire experience. This is how I want people to feel when they see my work. And then we've hooked it with, and here is how I am informing that experience through myself as an artist. This is why it matters that then I'm the person that tells your story. And then you can begin to look at things like demographics and clientele and, you know, who you're speaking to directly, because then it's just semantic shifts, right? It's just, you're in such a large market that it literally comes down to just shifting the semantics of who you're speaking to and where you're speaking. But you've then built a brand that's evergreen enough that the basis to it isn't the photography, or it isn't the work, or it isn't the value. It's you. Like, you're the proprietary element. Does that make sense?
Totally makes sense.
So then this is the hardest part. Then you have to put in the reps.
Yep.
You have to start by saying, like, okay, I'm going to get a brand new notebook and I'm going to write down literally every single client experience that I want my clients to have, how I'm going to show up, how I'm going to, I know a photographer, a good friend of mine that always shows up 5 minutes late to every shoot. And there's a reason for it. And it's a fascinating reason, because the vast majority of people, right, will say that you should always be like, business happens early. Like, you should always be early. You should always be waiting. You should always be whatever. Well, this person, and I'm not necessarily suggesting this is the way you should work, but this person looked at that and said, well, hey, if the norm is one way, I'm going to swing the other. Not so late that it's disrespectful or that it's rude, but late enough that the implication is that my time is always very valuable to me, and that I promise I'm going to make it up. And then what they end up doing is they show up 5 minutes late and they always shoot 10 minutes long. Does that make sense?
Yep.
But they built it into their business plan, not as a manipulative strategy, but as a communicative strategy. They're basically saying to their couples, like, hey, here's what's important to me. But it can't just be saying, it has to be showing. And so that's where you're going to start to build these lists and lists and lists. And when you do it all in one notebook, what you end up with is literally chapters where you can go back through and say, like, okay, here's how I want an engagement shoot to feel. Right? Here's when I had the perfect couple that was super intimate and vulnerable and they were just posing themselves. Here's how it felt. Was I talking or was I quiet? Were they talking or were they quiet? I don't know if you know the name Gabe McClintock, and I actually don't know if this is true or not. So Gabe, if you ever hear this, I'd actually I should just write you and find out. But Gabe, I've heard from a number of people before that Gabe has mentioned in the Way Up North series that he asks his couples to not speak during their connection sessions. Like, he asks them to just stay quiet. Now, again, that's a really unique and kind of an extreme perspective, but can you imagine how beautiful it is when you're a photographer that's as fascinated with intimacy and simplicity as you are, to ask couples to just lean on the intimacy of touch. Just lean on that. Don't clutter it up with small talk. Don't whatever. Just lean in on that. And then write down all these notes, man. Write down everything. Create an obsession with data where you can say, I have written down every squat, every curl, every overhead press. I have every single rep written down, and I know whether or not I'm getting stronger or weaker. And then go back through. Literally go back through. Oh, this is so funny. I just got this. That's very true. Gabe shot my wedding. Yeah, heck yeah. Cool. Well, then go back through and on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, on a quarterly basis, on a yearly basis, you get to go back through this notebook then. And you get to say, like, hey, here's all the things that work. This is what's built my brand. I have 9 couples that have already trusted me on this. So before you get out there and you're trying to throw this broad net now and you say, like, hey, what I want is 29 more couples, you're able to look at these 9 people that already trusted you. They already leaned in on you. They already understand what's valuable to you and who you are and why it matters to them. And now you build this remarkable experience for them. And If you get 2 more couples, great. If you get 3 more couples, fantastic. But this first year or this first 2 years, you make sure that every single couple gets the most curated, beautiful experience from you. And then you build a brand based on that core. So each one of those people then becomes the absolute epicenter, the nucleus to a brand new marketing engine. And that's where, honestly, like I think we could kind of blow your mind where that would go. But then you take one couple and you say like, hey, the communication was so on par. The schedule we built you was beautiful. The wedding day was fantastic. The engagement shoot was perfect. The editing, the delivery, all the timeline, everything was fantastic. I sat down with you so we could enjoy it together and build your album together. The album was well priced and it was in your hands in just a few weeks. Every piece of that was so good. And now here is extra. Here's all the things you didn't expect to get from me. And you start to just shower them with extra love, extra things, extra time, extra opportunities. And then on the back end, and you've probably heard Ben say this before, I've heard Pi say it as well. Then on the back end, you've already invested so much that now you have the opportunity to say, hey, it would mean so much to me. It would mean so much to me for this to go way beyond a Google review. How is it that I can be a part of y'all's lives and your friends' weddings? How is it that you can get me a seat at that table? And dude, you'll be floored. You'll be overrun. But it has to start with that list. It has to start with you completely understanding who you are and why it's so important. All right, dude. What are your thoughts?
That was just feel like I bit into like the world's densest burger.
There we go. That's a brand new one for me, everybody.
That's the double patty grass fed.
Oh my gosh.
That is a lot to chew on.
Well, you said you wanted the next 5 years, and we just gave it to you.
Yeah,
that literally is it.
Yep. And it's exactly what I wanted. It's kind of like what you said before, which is you don't know what you don't know. You also don't know what you know, which was I came into this with one train of thought, and now I'm leaving with, oh, that's what I need to be doing.
Well, maybe, or maybe let me put it this way. If your entire brand is going to be based on these ideas of like marrying comfort and simplicity, maybe you only have 2 things that you need to be doing. Like maybe that's it. If it doesn't speak to one of those things, then it's time poorly spent. Now, I realize that like now you're getting super meta, right? Now you're getting like way up in the clouds. But the reason I say that is because from a coaching perspective, from a mentoring perspective, I could easily just take your website and I'm happy to do this. It would be another call, but I'm happy to do this. But take your website, screenshot it, mark it up and say, hey, this doesn't fit. This doesn't flow. Instant things like your first page, I don't even know the stats offhand, but I think it's something like 86% of people never even click past the first page. Well, your first page is one picture and there is no scrollable element. So if they see it on mobile, they're stuck there and they leave and that's it. So you had one photo to inform them as to whether or not it's worth investing in you. It probably doesn't communicate enough, but the next logical place for them to go is into your gallery. Well, your very first picture and the very top picture in your gallery are from the very same shoot, and they were taken maybe 5 minutes apart from each other from a different perspective with a different editing concept, but it makes it look like you don't have enough work to fill up a website. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So all of that stuff is like down in the weeds where it's like, whoa, my client experience is communicating that I don't have clients, right? And so there's definitely tangible things like that. But, and this is how I've run my whole business for 15 years. If you just had those 2 things in mind, comfort and simplicity, right? Then you can go page by page. Is this page simple enough? And does it get to the point? Does it feel like the photography on it is comfortable and casual and intimate enough? Or am I just repeating the same sentence over and over again? And then you can go to the next page. Where do I want them to click? If they are the dream client, if they're the perfect client and they land on my page, what is the process through which they go to get to where they say, contact me? Right? How do I shape that? But it's always going to be through those two words. And that's why I always tell everybody to build the skeleton first. So you have a clear concept, a really clear concept as to who you are and who you are internally and why that should matter, why people would invest in you. And then the next logical step here is, we talked briefly about the fact that you want to see a 400% increase in, I'm sorry, no, that's not true. You want to see 1,000% increase.
Yeah, I'm not good at math.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. No. I'm okay. But in your profitability,
right?
And so, that would probably be another call that we can get on. And I'd be happy to look through that with you. But I think you need to start then by saying, everybody in this industry always wants to play the pricing game. What's your pricing model? How are you building out? How's your packages? Like blah, blah, blah. I'm going to look at it all the time for people and say, what services are you providing and what is your profit on those services? And the reason that that's so critical is because it eliminates all of the things that most photographers forget, which is your time equals an expense. Like we talked about the currency, right? Mm-hmm. Your time is a currency. So if a 10-hour wedding pays you $5,000, okay, and you don't take into account that you had to shoot for 10 hours and you had 5 hours of admin time and you had a 2-hour engagement session and it's going to take you 20 hours to edit. If you don't take all that time into account, then what you look at it is say, okay, I made $5,000 on this Saturday. But the reality is that once you look at all of that time, you break down all of that time, you pay yourself out on all of that time, whatever is left over is the profit. And you might actually only be making a few $100s on that wedding. So now for all the services that you're rendering, you're paying yourself out at X amount. Your gear is worth X amount. Your insurance and overhead is worth X amount. And I always want people to say, okay, what am I charging? What are the services I'm offering? And what is my profit on that service? Because the only thing that matters for sustainability is, am I making enough money for the services that I'm charging? But what matters for your happiness, your joy, is whether or not that margin is growing, whether or not you're actually profiting on all this time that you're spending. Not can I charge more per hour, but can I make more after I pay myself out for the hours?
Right.
Right?
Yep.
That's something that people don't typically correlate. You've got to think that thing through. So I could send you over, and that's actually another part of like the coaching program that we're building, are these spreadsheets that literally break down like everything that you've got to think into every piece of your overhead, how much your gear is worth. Are you renting that gear from yourself? I know you've heard me talk about that before. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But are you charging your clients for you to show up with gear? Because you're an artist. So that's fantastic. And you can show up with one paintbrush and be an artist, but paint costs money. Like canvases cost money. So just to assume that because you don't have to buy a new camera every single shoot doesn't mean that camera didn't cost money or isn't costing you money to own. So building out these overhead concepts are going to be really critical for you as well. But dude, I don't see any reason, genuinely, and I'm serious, and you've already seen me invest in you a lot over the last 6 months now. I don't see any reason why you can't completely achieve that 5-year, that $500,000 goal in the next 2 to 3, but it's going to take you like buckling down. And truly understanding like, what do these Dominican girls love so much about my work?
That's yeah. My friend actually pointed that out. Who does Yeah, I have him run video for when I do a wedding, and he's just like I have him in on the phone call when we're speaking to them and planning out their timeline because I want them to know who he is too. It's
Yeah.
kind of like blurring that line between friend and client. Like
Yep.
I want to, I literally want like when we show up, they're like, "Oh my God, our friends are here," kind of deal,
Exactly. Yeah.
right? And it was so funny. We get off the call, and he's just like, "More Dominican weddings," and I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And he's pointed out every single one that we've done together, and I'm like, "Oh," and then he's like, "Look at also the ones that we're gonna be doing," and I was like, "Oh."
That's awesome.
Yeah,
Hey.
I'm like, dude, because I'm over here like trying to figure out. I'm like, who is my client? Like, who is that? And it's like so hard for me to picture that. And now I'm just like, well, I guess it kind of spoke for itself.
I spoke about this at a conference a few years ago, and this isn't. We're live, so I should probably be more cautious about this. But this isn't probably the most politically correct way to do this. But if you want to get a really clear concept on who your client is, from just a like a 30,000 foot view, do two things: check the punctuation and the grammar in their emails, and then blur your eyes and look at the photos. And just scroll quickly, and you'll start to realize in a hurry, whether or not your clients look a lot alike and whether or not they sound a lot alike. Are you working with a lot of girls that click their tongues and put too many exclamation points at the end of every sentence? Are you working with a lot of lawyers that everything is grammatically perfect and it looks like they have reread and fixed it? Are you working with a lot of people who are socially uncomfortable around each other, and when you blur your eyes, the poses don't feel natural, right? They feel like there's tension there, or like they're bigger people that are uncomfortable in the frame, or they're little people that feel like they don't know where they belong. Are you working with all blondes, all brunettes? Are you right? Like, and you start to scroll through and just rapidly say like, okay, everybody that I'm working with right now is very well spoken. And, here's like a general age. They're all 30 years old. And it looks like they're, the only people that are hiring me are Dominicans. And it's like, okay, well, fantastic. And then you can back into it and say, is that what I want? Like, how do I serve those people? How do I take care of those people and do a good job for them because they are sustaining me and they're taking care of me and they're a lot of fun? But then how do I also grow the breadth of my clientele? And man, those are tough questions to answer in one call.
Yeah.
But you can do it. You could do it. I promise. So, all right. Hey man, I've got to wrap up. I've got another call I've got to get on to, but, Joseph, dude, what a pleasure, man. Thank you for
It's been
for sharing all this with me. Go grab a notebook, dude. Start writing down everything. There it is. I mean, every step of the way, and do it while it's all fresh. Like, don't let yourself callous to it. Like, go brain dump right now, and try and get a clear picture on. There isn't a right or wrong thing to take away from this call, but whatever it is, you need to go write it down so that it's actionable, so that you can relive it and relive it and relive it. And then I'm going to follow up with you here in a couple of days and figure out what it is that you're implementing. Cool.
Sounds great.
I love it. Hey, everybody that's jumping in and watching this, we've actually had quite a few people over on YouTube, which is kind of cool.
Oh,
hey,
really?
thank you guys for joining this. This is a big deal, Joseph, dude. Seriously, this turned into an opportunity for us to teach other people, via you, and that's a big deal. So thanks for having that kind of vulnerability.
That's what I wanted, and it's kind of, I already mentioned that, didn't I?
I need to catch up. I'm back and forth to New York a lot, so we need to at some point grab that whiskey and make this more official. The bromance can get real.
Oh, I'm down, dude. Trust me.
Oh, right.
My wife is almost tired of hearing your name.
Oh gosh. Okay, Joseph's wife. I promise nothing is going on. All right, guys. Well, I appreciate it, man. Joseph, let's connect again soon. All right, buddy.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much,
bud. Yeah, thank you. Bye, dude.